Frequency matters. Frequency matters. Hello, and welcome to the Frequency Matters podcast.
Well, welcome to the show. This is the Frequency Matters podcast, episode number 7, and I'm delighted to have you two today. I personally, in my very first tuning fork education class, one of the very first things I learned was the frequency plus intention equals healing formula, and that has been the foundation of all of my work in sound healing for the past decade and probably and a half.
Wow.
So it is so exciting to have you. If you would like to just go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a background of how you got to where you are today.
I'm going to introduce Andi and she'll introduce me.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, I love that.
But before we do that, Kim, just want to say we are delighted to be here and looking really forward to sharing with you and our audience all about sound. So Jonathan, you can introduce me, then I'll introduce you.
I love it.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Goldman, and the being to my right is my beloved, extraordinary wife, Andi Goldman, who is a holistic psychotherapist. And as well, she is my wife, partner, friend, and we've been working together in the field of sound healing since we've been together 25 years. She's the co-author of 2 award-winning books that with me, Chakra Frequencies and The Humming Effect. She plays the harp. She and I traverse the fields of sound healing together, and it's just a blessing to be in partnership with someone else.
Oh, well, Jonathan, thank you for that introduction. And Kim, I will now introduce Jonathan, who is my beloved partner. And we have been working together both in our daily lives, our business lives, for actually almost 30 years now. It's been like 29. I know, it's just amazing. And Jonathan is, I like to say that he is a founding pioneer in the field, the modern day field of sound healing. And Jonathan's information, his music, his love of sound has really brought the healing sound field up to where it is today, because he has been doing this work for 40 years. He has a master's degree in utilizing sound for healing. He has been traveling this sound current in a very deep way for so long. He has written, 4 or 5 books, and I've been delighted to have co-authored 2 of them. He has brought down many different frequencies with tuning forks. And as we were talking before the program started, his formula, frequency plus intent equals healing, I think is just a basic formula for sound healing. Mm-hmm. So he's a heavyweight guy here in this field of sound. So Kim, thank you again for having us on, and we're just happy to meet you and to be here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Andi and Kim. Now to answer some questions. And by gosh and by golly, what a blessing it is to be sharing with you and being able to talk. And I mean, you sort of nailed it in terms of the formula frequency plus intent equals healing, because I came up with that in the 1980s. Wow. And it came up as a result of my master's degree program at Lesley University, where I had...
What was your master's in? I apologize for interrupting.
It was an independent study researching the uses of sound and music for healing.
Fascinating.
And that then evolved ultimately to my first book, Healing Sounds, which just recently got re-released and 30th anniversary edition. But that formula first came, I was, okay, we'll step in the Wayback Machine, and there it is. 1980s, I am in front of a computer that uses a DOS operating system. So it's a dark screen with amber letters. It's kind of setting the field.
Okay.
And I have a pile of papers about Yohai, which are all sorts of different systems that people have utilized to resonate the chakras, to resonate the organs, all sorts, the etheric field, you name it, I had it. I've been collecting it for years, and now I was putting it together for my master's dissertation. And I come from a family of doctors, brother, grandfather, father, all medical doctors. Pretty good developed left brain at that time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be the first person who's really going to coalesce and put all this information together and have a one-to-one correlation between an organ and a sound, or a chakra and a sound. And I began to put it all together. And nothing fit, nothing worked, nothing was in agreement. You'd have spiritual master A using a particular set of mantras for a chakra, and spiritual master B using a completely different set of mantras for the same chakra, or vice versa. You'd have Dr. X using a particular tone or frequency for an organ, Dr. Y using a completely different set of frequencies or tone for the same organ or for different organs. And this was, mind you, a while ago. So this has been private, if you like, correspondence often that I'd find with these people. And they were simply so blessed to be talking. Hold on for a moment.
We just lost our
Skype just jumped up in front of me. Let's see. Stop
I
it,
still see
Skype.
you.
oh good.
Okay.
Kim.
Yeah, you're still on my end.
Okay, we've got a blank screen in front
Oh,
of us.
this is nasty.
Oh dear.
Oh my goodness gracious. I hope you can cut this out of the thing, because this is
Okay. No problem. Yep, there goes
there
Mercury
we go.
retrograde again, right?
That was wild. Just a white screen. Just anyway, continue, honey.
bad Skype. Okay. So there I was sitting in front of this screen with this pile of papers trying to correlate, and it didn't make sense. And literally, I put my head in my hands, and I remember rocking back and forth, thinking, oh gosh, this just doesn't correlate, because here we have all these different systems that people are using, and they're not the same. How can this be? How can this be? I was in a state of intellectual angst, if you like. And I hear this inner voice say, it is not only the frequency of the sound that creates its effect. It is also the intention of the person making and receiving that sound. And it was like this light bulb went off over my head.
Wow.
And I wrote down on the amber letters, which kind of looked gold on this dark screen. So it was almost like gold letters on a dark screen. Frequency plus intent equals healing. And I have to say that that formula is more valid now than it was back then. And I'll continue just for a moment, because when I first came up with this, early to mid 1980s, I would be talking to these different scientists and doctors at these conferences and conventions about this. Have you ever thought of the power of intention to influence and affect the, if you like, effective sound or whatever you like, because I think it applies to everything? And they'd look at me like I was just from another planet, which might be true, but nevertheless, you know, I knew that this wasn't. And then, blessed be, we had people like Wayne Dyer first writing a book on the power of intent. Then people like Masaru Emoto doing his water crystal photographs showing the power of intent. Then people like Dr. Bruce Lipton writing The Biology of Belief, and Joe Dispenza working with the placebo effect, and all these people really talking about how our consciousness interfaces with reality and helps create the outcome. So I also have some sub-corollaries. One is vocalization, making the sound, plus visualization, visualizing it equals manifestation. And even sound plus belief equals outcome. And that is just so very, very important, because these days people have become, I am not incidentally a frequencyist, meaning that because of this, I don't believe that there's just one frequency that works. And as we'll talk about in a minute, we are also huge believers in the fact that we are all unique vibratory beings. But regardless,
I was just going to say, and that brings me into the 4 pillars.
right? But
Yeah,
let me just
about.
conclude this one
Yeah.
for a half a second, because it's so important. A lot of people are into specific frequencies having specific healing effects. We can talk more about that later. And we think that it's great if people have this belief, because it's great, then they are encoded into it and they'll be getting effects. We just don't want to limit people in terms of their understanding about the power of sound, because different things work for different people. And he was talking about the 4 pillars of sound healing, which is based upon the 7 secrets of sound healing, which is one of my books. Andy, take it away.
So, Kim, that when Jonathan was just mentioning these aspects, gosh, I don't know, it was a couple years ago, and we thought, let's just come up with 4 with the foundational pillars of sound, because he had written a book, The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing, which really is a great book for people who are opening up to sound, want to learn about it. And we thought, let's sort of condense that and let's come up with 4 pillars. And so basically those 4 pillars are, the first one is everything is in a state of vibration. The second one is what we've just been talking about, and that is intention is powerful. The third one is we are all unique vibratory beings. Therefore, one particular frequency may affect you, Kim, in a certain way, and may affect me in a completely different way. And so really the fact that we're all unique vibratory beings, it's really important, we think, to hold that as, one of the foundations of working with sound. And of course, the fourth one is, and this is actually my favorite one, I love it, and it is silence is golden. And so many people sort of forget about the value and the importance of being in silence. After we have made sound, after we have toned or hummed or, recited mantras, we then go into silence. And that silence is where the shifts and the changes actually begin to really occur. And it helps us to tune in to our own inner wisdom. So,
I like to say that silence is the yin to the yang of sound.
Okay.
And Andy taught me something wonderful, which is the word silent and the word listen are anagrams.
That's so fascinating. I never put that together. How cool.
Yes. So we have that. And it really is. It took me, actually, that was one of the great hidden secrets of sound healing, because I probably had been in the field for 25 years myself before I discovered that. Because you get so enamored with how good it is to make sound and listen that you don't realize that if that period of silence is really, it's like the peak moment when the true shift and change occurs.
Yes, that's one of the few things when I work with crystal singing bowls as one of my tools and instruments. And one of my favorite things to teach from the very moment that I start playing is to just listen to when you can almost no longer hear it. So you get that, like that, what I imagine that the sound is infinite in nature, but there's a point where we just can't hear it anymore. And so when we keep listening for that moment, and I feel that's probably different for everybody, and as we attune our ears greater and greater, we can hear it just a little bit longer. That's such a magical moment.
Well, it's interesting too, because the aspect of listening, particularly listening to silence, I don't even know if there is such a thing. And in really pretty high level shabd yoga, meditation, experiences of inner listening, that you go to higher planes of consciousness. You just really listen within, and I almost defy anyone not to be able to then become aware, whether first it's the sound of your breathing or your nervous system.
I mean, it's almost like when you reach that point that you were just talking about, Kim, where you literally, you know, that sound just, you know, dissipates and goes and dissipates. And then it's like when you really cannot hear it, you know, with your ears, that's the point where, you know, you really just totally go within. And that is, I always feel like that inner wisdom that we all have really comes through in that moment, those moments of silence. And so we're actually very big proponents of, yes, indeed, working with sound, of course, but remembering the silence that goes with that. So
do you, when you do your crystal bowls, do you let them, the recipients, sit in silence for a while?
That's a great question. I tend to play them like kind of in phases. So, and it always different. But I love that question, and a beautiful reminder that how important that is. At the end, I feel like that's such a sacred moment at the end of receiving all these vibrations, just to integrate in silence. And I think I personally, and I know many others, have almost a fear of that silence.
yes, Kim, that is absolutely right. It's like, oh my gosh, we know people who do have that fear, and we've worked with them and really helped them to realize that, of course, there is nothing to fear, that you're just going to be able to, you know, become more familiar with your consciousness, your psyche. But that's interesting because people are, they feel that if they go into that silence, that there's something,
it's very scary for them,
wrong, that it's scary.
and silence is sacred. Listen, I just want to, so we do something called the sound satsang. We've been doing this now for about a year, and the subject this month is mantras. And I basically remembered, just as we were talking about, we would do for 21 years a healing sounds intensive, which was wonderful. Had about 100 people there because we would do it in a circle, so that's as many as we allowed.
For 10 days.
For 10 days.
It was quite powerful.
And it went for about 12 hours a day with, you know, time to assimilate. Very, very cool. And we would do chanting at night, chanting of a mantra. And we would do different mantras from different traditions. And we would start beginning by first teaching the pronunciation of the mantra, then teaching the meaning of the mantra. We'd have people meditate on what it means. Then they would chant the mantra for about a half hour. It was way cool. And then we'd stop and we'd be in silence for perhaps 15, 20 minutes. And if we didn't ring bells and say, now it's time to come back, they'd still be there now. Because that was the point. Once they stopped chanting, if you like, and because the chant or the sound anchored them into the planet. And if they then close their eyes, lay back, they'd shoot off. So another thing to think about is the fact that the sound is actually anchoring you. And once it stops and you're in silence, you can really release and travel to higher realms of consciousness.
Mhm.
Wow. That's
And people would
amazing.
have massive experiences, psychotropic experiences.
Wow.
Wow. Now, have you experienced that with anything other than chanting, other sounds and
Totally,
vibrations?
totally.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
including listening to recordings and
Any,
whatnot.
yeah, really any time that,
Bowls, bells, whatever.
yeah, anytime that we are in an energy field where sound is predominant, and then we, that, I mean, physical sound that we can actually hear that, travels, in through our auditory pathways up into our brain. And then we go into silence, no matter what the sound is. And even if you're, this just occurred to me, even if there's an unpleasant sound happening that you happen to, the buzzing of something in your house, or, lawnmowers out in the yard, and all of a sudden it stops and you go, oh, wow, I didn't realize how intense that was. So, I mean, any sound at all can actually
Yeah.
do that for
Oh
sure.
yeah. We
Yeah.
have my husband and I have 2 kids, and when they have friends over and they're getting loud and crazy, and then we like send them outside or to the basement, it's just like that moment is so sacred. It's like, do you hear that? I'm like, no, nothing. I hear nothing, and it's glorious.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
Yes. Yes.
I would, if you like to expand a little bit on what Andy was saying before, and ask you how we can best facilitate your quest for knowledge, techniques, and all that is. We talked about the 4 pillars, the first one being that everything is in vibration. Does that need further clarification, or have you talked with people? Do they understand it? And
I don't think it's really been a topic of conversation on this show yet. I deeply understand it and resonate with it, but I do think it is worth going into some detail if you have a couple minutes to talk about that.
sure, okay, may I?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, if you examine the sacred tenets of the different spiritual traditions on the planet, you find that they believe that life, the universe, and everything was created solely through the power of sound. In the beginning was the Word, and the Lord said, let there be light, sound preceding light. And we find now that our ancient mystics and our quantum magicians are in, if you like, resonance, where they believe that everything is sound, everything is vibration. In fact, the latest quantum theory is the whole concept of string theory, that there are multitudinous vibrating universes. So everything is in a state of vibration, from the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around their sun. And just because something is in or out of our audible range doesn't mean that the sound isn't being created. For example, our friends in the ocean, the dolphins, can hear upwards of 180,000 cycles a second. We only hear upwards. Our hearing range is around 16 cycles to around 16,000. They hear over 10 times our level of hearing. So to us, there's nothing going on. But to dolphins, they can be exchanging recipes for tuna noodle casserole, perhaps, or best ways to get through the Bering Strait. So there is sound. So just the same way, the concept of, if you like, healing with sound is simply this: every part of our body is in a state of resonance, state of vibration. We are like this overall symphony of the self. Every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of the body is in vibration, and it's playing together. And when we're well, we say we're in sound health. The concept of, if you like, imbalance of an organ or whatnot is the fact that the organ or bone is vibrating out of its correct resonant frequency. It's a little bit like with this orchestra that we have. The orchestra is playing. Second violin player loses their sheet music. They play out of tune, out of harmony, out of ease. Pretty soon, the entire string section is off. Pretty soon, the entire orchestra is off. And this is, if you like, akin to a part of our body losing its natural, healthy harmonic resonance.
Hmm.
And we say it's vibrating out of ease, out of harmony. We say it is diseased.
Mhm.
So the very simple practice of using sound for healing is to try to put this part of the body or energetic field back into harmony and balance.
Right. And there are there are many ways that we can actually do this. And I think that that brings me to the two different ways that sound actually affects us. And Kim, we actually are affected in two different ways with sound. The first way is called psychoacoustics. And this is when we're actually listening. And the sound goes into our ears. It travels into our auditory pathways up into our brain and actually affects our nervous system and our respiration and our brain waves.
Heart rate.
Yeah. And so if we're listening to healing music, that would actually be a psychoacoustic effect.
And also our voice as we're listening.
Yeah. Well, and the other way we hear is through vibroacoustics. And that is where the sound goes directly into the physical body. And so there are, when we're using tuning forks, I know we mentioned that earlier, but when we put them right on the body, here's a great tuning fork.
Boom.
And that would be a vibroacoustic effect. And
let me take
get
over
the
for
voice.
a second.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, but the first thing is that when we are working with psychoacoustics and the voice and we hear or an instrument, it's really important. Just one thing we want to share is that we can do healing simply through the conversational voice, simply through projecting kindness and love or what positive things through the voice. It's very important that people begin to understand the power of frequency plus intent, of the sound, the vocalization plus visualization, because just as we can encode positive energy, love, harmony, compassion in our voice, we can do the opposite. And a lot of times people do that. And we just caution, we have enough fear and imbalance on our planet. And we need to really project kindness when we're speaking. So we really want to suggest that when people are engaged in conversation, that they do it with compassion and kindness, regardless of what they're saying. I share that with you, that perhaps people go, oh, wow. Yeah, because, the first thing they usually, a total aside, but I'm going to jump around. In our book, Chakra Frequencies, which basically talks about using sound, I'm going to let Andi clear her throat.
Thank you.
She's got.
Anyway, thank you. I wanted to do that because, because getting back to our speaking voice, that, Jonathan just said, like holding that intention when we are, speaking to anybody, to be as much as we can in a state of kindness and compassion. And sound affects us in so many different ways. And when we are listening and the psychoacoustic effect is happening, that's happening really all the time and with our speaking voice. But when we go into the vibroacoustic, now I want to kind of jump to that point because I want to talk about humming.
I wasn't done yet, though. So in Chakra Frequencies, we have some exercises that you can do when you're sort of ticked off at each other. And it's actually really, really powerful and important. And indeed, we can be using an om or a hum or an ah, but you make a sound together. You have to agree that you're going to make the sound beforehand. Because what you want to do when you're really ticked off at somebody is scream at them in anger, which is the adverse aspect of using sound for healing. And I got to tell you, Kim, Andy and I will, go, I'm not going there. I'm not going to do this. And one of us will say, hey, let's do an Om together.
Yeah.
And within a minute, maybe 2 minutes, we're like, oh, what were we fighting about?
Right. It's honestly,
Oh,
Kim,
I
it
love
works
that.
every single time. But the really important key is making that verbal contract ahead of time with your partner, with your children,
Yes.
with, people that you are in close contact with. And you make that contract, that verbal contract, because when you are in that state of anxiety or frustration or anger, you don't really think about, oh, let me Om through this, or let me hum through this. So if you can, one of you can say, hey, all right, give me your hands. Okay, we're going to hold hands. And now we're just going to just Om together, or we'll hum. We do a lot of humming in this house. And after about a minute, and then we'll keep on going, it shifts the energy, and it really brings in it lowers the anxiety level immensely.
That's beautiful.
So we share that technique.
I see the value in establishing that contract in advance, because in the moment you're arguing with somebody, they're not going to see eye to eye and say, yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So that's something that I'm definitely going to try with my daughter, because she and I go head to head sometimes. It's like, how did we get to this place? And then we're yelling at each other like, I just want to hug you.
I know. And well, and I do want to say, Kim, that children respond so beautifully, so readily to working with their voice and working with oming and sounding. I have a really good friend who, her children are now grown, but when they were young, I taught them how to, work with tuning forks and how to sound forth with oming and humming. And so what my friend would do in the morning when things were so chaotic and, they're trying to get ready to get out of the house, to get to school. And, we can't remember this, can't remember that. And she would say, everybody stop, hold hands. And we're now going to Om together. And we will do that. And then we'll walk out the door. And she said it just worked like a dream.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to try this. I'm excited. Yeah. So I'm interested in the benefits of vibroacoustics versus psychoacoustics. Do they affect the body differently, or is the same healing potential there?
So I will take that one and just suggest that psychoacoustics and vibroacoustics, the New York Times science section, February 8th, 1988, a while ago. Here's the headline: sound shaped into dazzling tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. So when you're talking about rearranging molecular structure, for the most part, you're talking about vibroacoustics. And the next part was and levitate objects, which gets into the mystical, but they've been doing that with very small objects like ping pong balls and very, very, if you like, high decibel sounds. But the bottom line is that vibroacoustics has not been studied as well as psychoacoustics. Psychoacoustics, oftentimes you'll see, now there's a whole lot of stuff on the effects of music in the brain, for example. And they stick people in MRIs and they're able to play music or whatnot and see what parts of the brain are lighting up. But one of the major things in the future of sound will be that they are going to be basically able to see that using different sorts of vibrational frequencies can affect the physical body and literally rearrange structure, whether you're giving yourself something as simple as a sonic massage to doing something. There are two ways, incidentally, that sound works as a healing modality. The first one is to reinforce the vibrations of an object, such as a heart or a liver or an organ. And the other one is to literally shatter the virus or whatnot. And we call that a deconstructive phenomenon, but they both kind of work with the concept of frequency. It's just that if you take the frequency, for example, of a glass and then you overamp it, the glass will shatter.
Mhm.
That's the deconstructive, and the constructive is taking the frequency of an organ and not blowing it up. So it's just a matter of balance.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've often wondered with my crystal singing bowls, I've recorded music with another musician in the past and working on a new album as well. And I've been curious if the effects, the healing benefits are still potential when it's listened to from like a speaker versus played live. And with our new album, we're looking into getting like higher quality recording equipment so that we can really capture some of that vibration and bake it into the speaker. But still, I'm curious, is that going to be considered, that's more of a vibroacoustic or psychoacoustic?
Well, actually, sound affects us both ways, and the benefits are great both ways. But I'm going back to intention.
Yeah.
And so when you're creating your recordings and you're actually recording, the intention that you're holding as you're doing that is very, very powerful. Now, when we're talking about vibroacoustics, now I wanted to kind of jump in with our book on the humming effect, because we believe through our experience and through our research that humming is the most powerful vibroacoustic effect that we can do.
Sure.
And when we are humming, the frequencies, the vibrations are going throughout our bodies and really affect us deeply.
And you get the release of all sorts of different neurochemicals. First of all, you get the lowering of heart rate, respiration, brain waves. They all sink down, which happens also same way with psychoacoustics. But here you also get the release of oxytocin, you get the release of melatonin, you get the release of nitric oxide, which is a hugely important molecule, if you like, that is wonderful as a vasodilator. And it also is an antiviral agent. You get when you're humming, believe it or not, you get increased heart rate variability, and you literally work with the vagus nerve. So all this stuff is going on. But I'm going to jump back to where you first asked, the question about doing these sounds in terms of what's the best way to do it. Because that was just a question that came up with our sound satsang last month. We dedicated it to question and answer, and one of them was, okay, for the question ultimately first started out with, is acoustic versus electric better? And it got pretty interesting as a phenomena. And, on a level, I think that, as Andy was saying, the intention is very, very important. And I mean, I could tell you stories, but you've obviously experienced the fact that you cannot create a recording that's near as vibrationally effective, whether it's psychoacoustics or vibroacoustics or whatnot, whether your auric field is being affected, with crystal bowls, both things for sure are happening. You can't create a recording. And the reality is, even if you create the most magnificent, huge sound spectrum recording, and somebody listens back on earbuds as an MP3, it's not going to matter that much, because there's going to be a lot of loss of sound. And yet people will experience some sort of benefit because of, number one, the sounds. But I mean, you got your little earbuds in, and I'm sure that you probably have big speakers when you listen to stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, if you listen on your iPhone or whatnot, probably an MP3, which compresses the sound. If this is the waveform for a CD, then this is the waveform for an MP3. It compresses it. It's about 1/10 the amount of information. A lot of the sound information is removed. It tricks your ear, but it doesn't have the same sound energy. And yet to suggest that these things don't have necessarily therapeutic effects. We know too many people. It's like the question of, is analog better than digital? is vinyl better than CDs? Well, it depends. And I think when we first began with digital recording back in the 90s, it had some detriments to it, but it's gotten improved. And as I suggested on the sound satsang that we did, we would take a CD and we'd put it in the middle of a circle with crystals and ask the entities that we were working with to come on there and be present when people were, and it seemed to be very effective.
Also, I want to get to the where you ask the question, which is more beneficial, psychoacoustics or vibroacoustics, and we receive benefit from both of those ways that sound affects us. Now, through the many, many years that we've been working with sound, we personally focus on the use of our own voice because we really feel that the power of the voice is just very important. And when people begin to open up to the world of sound, a lot of people feel like, well, they can't really go into sound healing because they can't sing or they don't have a good voice. And we have really, through the years, tried to impart that you don't have to be a singer to work with sound. You don't have to be a musician, that you can use your own voice as your instrument. And of course, we wrote our book, The Humming Effect, for this very reason, that we wanted to be more inclusive. We wanted more and more people to know about the power of sound, the incredible healing power that we are all walking around with and don't know it, our own voice.
Yeah, that's so powerful and beautiful. And I'm so glad that you have written this book, and I look forward to hearing more about it. I remember a few years back when I was first kind of coming out of the closet with my sound tools, because I was very shy about them at first. Felt like this is really nerdy thing for some reason. Like people are going to find me crazy. But when I first started coming out with it and feeling like really called to share them with others, I remember I didn't have them when I was going back to be with a group of friends that I knew before I'd really been impacted by sound. And I was feeling very torn by that, but that's kind of the same message that came through, was that you don't need the tools. You are the instrument. The tools are tools. Right. And it's really our frequency that's coming through when we play the tools.
Right. And the voice is probably the best tool to encode frequency. We love bowls, but you got to go through yourself into the bowl, which is great. And also, on a level, it's hard to put a crystal bowl in your back pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And, take it somewhere in the woods.
If you're out traveling.
Yeah.
Or walking in the woods. And that's the other real benefit of beginning to understand that we can affect through our own voice our energy field. When we are filled with anxiety or frustration, or we want to put ourselves back into balance, and maybe we are working on a pretty intense issue and we can't get to our therapist, or whatever the situation is, and if we just stop, take some nice deep breaths and begin to even just hum. And of course, we call it conscious humming. What's going to happen is that we are going to shift out of that anxiety. We're going to be able to bring ourselves back into balance through the simple use of our own voice. So we become our own therapist, basically.
Wonderful. Yeah, I did watch one of the podcasts you did, and I loved how you gave the analogy of that. What is the sound that we make when we're not sure of an answer to a question? and we say, and sometimes that's just the space that we need, or the vibration, maybe what it is that is delivering that answer to us.
And Kim, you can also, when you hum, and when we do conscious humming, which is composed of simply taking some deep breaths, humming on a single tone, and projecting your intention on what the purpose of the hum is. And we've found the hum to be such an all-purpose sound that everybody can make. It's not that we don't work with all sorts of other sounds, or
we have all,
bowls or whatnot.
we have all the tools, all the.
But that's one we can take with us all the time and use all the time. And people are not judgmental when they make the hum.
Right. We've never heard anyone say, I am just not a good hummer. So everybody can hum. And of course, we do add the caveat of conscious humming and the importance of taking that diaphragmatic breath, before you hum. And then as you breathe, your body begins to relax, and then you let that hum come on that out breath. And then that begins to shift and change your vibratory field, basically.
Wow. Is there a certain sound or tone or hum that is more powerful than others that you found?
Go ahead.
Okay, people are always looking for their sound, their tone, their frequency.
Okay.
And we think that the hum is a great way to do that. Our book, The Humming Effect, is all sorts of stuff. But here's the other thing that we talked about, we've neglected to say in terms of conscious humming, is that you want to hum in a comfortable voice. And that's usually right around the, if you like, frequency of the conversational voice. That's usually very much in resonance with you, which brings me to one of the 4 pillars that we didn't discuss. We want to briefly talk about it, which is the concept that we are all unique vibratory beings. And therefore, I've read and I've done all this stuff, and people say, 120 cycles per second is the ideal sound to hum at. Well, actually, I know the scientific paper that came from, and they were basically working with a particular bandwidth, and they use that as 120 or 125, but it can be 150, 180, or 200. If you're a woman, you're going to be in the next octave than me. So if we do the same tone, it's going to be an octave apart. So not to get locked into specific frequencies, but rather what feels good for you, because if it feels good for you, then you're going to be able to feel it, and then it's real. Getting into real quick, we're all unique vibratory beings, is the fact that we always ask in a workshop, how many of you are allergic to penicillin? About 20% of the people raise their hands. Okay. If we perceive that everything in the universe is in a state of vibration, this includes penicillin. It's probably a frequency or a series of frequencies. And for 80% of you, it's going to be a healing frequency. But for 20% of you, it's going to be toxic. And that's an incredible metaphor for almost everything that we've encountered. There is no one size fits all. And we need to honor that and empower ourselves with that.
But there wouldn't be any toxic humming vibrations, I wouldn't imagine.
Well, I would not.
Or
I imagine if you try to go, for you, that would probably not be a very positive experience.
I see. Okay.
But by and large, Kim, we've never come across any real toxic humming.
Sure.
No, because once again, in your field of comfort.
Yeah.
Got it.
And also, it's that intention, I know we keep going back to that, but when we have the intention of, bringing balance into our lives, when we have the intention of, shifting out the anxiety or the frustration and so forth, we have an intention that is of a high level. And so then we sound forth, then we hum or we tone or whatever we choose to do with the sound. And that is what really makes the difference.
And you just said something that I have to comment on now. when Andy said a high level, she wasn't talking about a frequency level. People go, oh, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling high. Low sounds and high sounds are not interrelated with emotional experiences or even spiritual experiences. So people go, oh, do I need to make a high sound in order to have a high vibration? Apples and oranges. That makes sense?
Yes. Yes.
And
It's
very
not,
important for people to understand, because there's a lot of confusion about that.
it's not a tone. We're not talking about a specific tone or an
Or
octave.
frequency, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have another question. When I had created music in the past with this with the previous musician, we would always set an intention for our songs, and the intentions were usually very, very big, much bigger than my own field. Can you talk a little bit about that and our power to hold an intention to affect the whole planet? I know you have done some work on this, and you have a library. So tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know where to begin. Andy, that one.
Well, I would begin with believing that the intention that you're setting is going to actually work, number one, and have belief in what you're doing. But, you know, we every year have what we call World Sound Healing Day, where we set the intention of having people throughout the planet sound forth with the intention of sending healing, loving energy to Mother Earth and to our planet. And we have people all over the world who do that on a particular day. We do it every year on February 14th, and this is our 22nd year coming up.
Wow.
And so there is a huge intention in that. And we feel strongly, and we have had some evidence that there has been an effect that has occurred.
The idea that our sound can interface with the consciousness of the planet. So kudos to you, congratulations to you for doing that type of thing. And it's real. And one of the things we probably would like to suggest is that one great technique that we oftentimes will use before we work with sound, we do an invocation to the angel of sound that works for us, because that's a very powerful, we ask for the sound of light surround us, the light of sound guide us, sacred sound come through us for the harmony of all, which is wonderful. But also you've probably heard of heart math, maybe, maybe not, and the fact that you can have heart brain coherence. So this happens doing deep breathing and simply adding, if you like, the element of appreciation, gratitude. It really seems to amplify our electromagnetic field anywhere from 50 to 500 to some people even perceive 5,000 times greater. And then you add the element of sound, and that makes it even greater. It basically takes this field that we're creating. This is why the different prayers on our planet are, for the most part, vocalized. Whispered, chanted, spoken, or sung is because sound amplifies the power of prayer, amplifies the power of meditation on a level. So with this understanding, you know, trying to be in a state of gratitude, compassion, appreciation while you're doing this, giving thanks. There you are making beautiful music, beautiful sound. You're doing this. Wow.
And Kim, I'm really curious as to what effect you felt when you and your, you know, music partner did the intention. Did you feel that there was some, you know, something happening?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when we would play, it was always improv. We would set the intention for the song and then just start playing and ask for that higher guidance and wisdom to play through us. And that would happen every time. And it was so beautiful. When we would finish, it was like, wow. It's like, we didn't play that. Like, that just came through us. And I have to trust that that intention was being carried out, because it was through me. It wasn't really, and I listened to some of the music that we've created, and I'm blown away. It's just so beautiful.
What a blessing.
And that's when we step aside and let the music and let the sound come through us without controlling it in any way. And then you do know, hey, it is coming from definitely a higher realm.
It's so beautiful. And even when I do sound baths, I really set an intention for that to come through. And then there's sometimes wisdom or guidance that comes through, and I'm like, well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. So I to trust that if it's coming through me, that also is something is working on a much higher level than I can understand.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. There's something about when that happens, when you just have the ego step aside, you have, you just say, my intention is to play through me, not from me, basically. And it's always, in my own experience, it's always just the best feeling. Because I don't know where that came from, but thank you, angels.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful.
Yeah, but intention, once again, we keep going back to that because it really is such a huge, huge part of working with sound. So
coming back kind of full circle, talking about intention, oftentimes people aren't really familiar with that word when I say choose an intention. And I think back to when I first started practicing yoga, and the yoga teacher would say, choose an intention for your practice today. And it didn't really resonate with me at that time. Now, of course, I choose an intention for everything. But how do you, as a pioneer in this field, how do you define that word or explain it to people that aren't familiar?
Wow. Define intention. The word purpose came in. What is the purpose or the desired outcome for a particular sound or activity or act that you do? And I think on a level that I was thinking before you asked it, I would say that I wanted to talk to you about what I think may be the most important purpose. Really.
Perfect.
And it was about compassion. That I think if there was one particular thing that we could encode upon our conduct in life, it'd be to lead a compassionate life. Andi?
Well, and I think too, Kim, when you use the word intention and maybe someone doesn't quite resonate with what do you mean by that? What is intention? I think too, it's, the thoughts that we're holding when we are making sound, if we are doing yoga, whatever, but it's like, choose an intention. You could easily say, choose a way that you want to feel right now. Nice. That would be definitely a different way of saying it, and holding the thoughts that you want to feel.
Got another one. Okay, intention, also not the same, but you can at the same time vibrate at the same thing. Would be visualization. For some people, they're good at visualizing things. Other people are good at feeling things. So, another one was sound plus feeling equals outcome or whatnot. But just the idea that when we have people hum, what are you humming for? What is your purpose? What is your intention?
Or what do you want to have happen?
Sure.
After you've honed or after you've done your sound, what is it you want to have actually manifest? And then putting those thoughts into that.
And I think it depends upon the person, their ability, because maybe intention is indeed difficult, but maybe, or where would you like the sound to resonate? Let's say you have an imbalance in your body, and you're doing a hum, or you're receiving a bowl, and you can have, rather than, your intention is it's going to heal X, Y, or Z, just, visualize or feel the sound, focus your intention and attention on the sound resonating a particular part of your body that's out of balance.
Mm-hmm. And you know, and I know that we're running close to the end of the show, and I just wanted to let people know that on our website, healingsounds.com, we have so much information and educational material, and of course free downloads so you can practice with your own sounds. We have one that's called the 7-minute chakra tune-up, and you tone a particular vowel sound for each chakra. I mean, we have a variety. Of course, we have our store, and we have our books and our tuning forks and so forth. And people that have listened today and really want to learn more about sound, please visit healingsounds.com.
Oh, totally. It's a wonderful,
sounds is plural,
right?
Healing Sounds.
Healing Sounds. It's a wonderful award-winning website. I wanted to just add something that our dear friend, mentor, and angelic being now, named Sarah Benson, said to us. She said, the true sound of healing
is love. And we have embraced those words and really integrated them into our sound work. And these are words from Sarah Benson, who was our dear beloved friend and mentor as well. And she has passed away.
But just as a thing to acknowledge from our belief system, love can be encoded on any sound. It is not a specific frequency. If you need to believe that this particular frequency is the frequency of love, that's wonderful. If that's what you need to do. But we just want to suggest that we all be fluid and expansive and understand that the universe is love and the universe is sound. Therefore, how can it be a frequency?
Yeah.
How can it be separate?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's what you encode.
Yeah. So with that all being said, knowing that the name of the show is Frequency Matters, what does that mean to you?
I got it. Okay. So people say to me, and people have said to me, because I have frequency plus intent, well, what's a relationship? And I'm going to say it's an equal balance. There's an aspect of frequency that basically causes a physical plane vibratory shift. On a level, sound is the most subtle of what are called the subtle energies, but it's causing a vibrational level. Therefore, if you can encode that with the intentionality, then you are golden. And I'd like to, suggest for anybody who thinks it's all intention, until you can levitate and walk through walls. If you're one of those beings, then it's probably all intention. Otherwise, the sound is going to be something. And therefore we have to work with the 7 secrets and the 4 pillars of sound healing.
Well, and Kim, I do love that the name of your show is called Frequency Matters, because the energy, the thoughts of compassion, love, positive vibrations are all held in frequencies, and it matters what intentions, it matters what thoughts you have, it matters how you go about your day, and knowing that, wait a minute, I am interfacing with a lot of different people, and I want my frequency to be of a high vibration. And so holding the frequencies of love, it truly matters.
Yes. Every thought, every belief, it definitely operates on a frequency. So when you put it in that lens, frequency matters in many ways.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I feel so blessed to have spent this last hour with you both. I feel like the compassion and love that you have both exuded through the screen is immeasurable, and I am so grateful for your wisdom and your time, and like I said, the compassion and love. And I want to thank you both so much for spending time with me today and sharing all the wisdom that you have with our listeners and myself.
One last thing,
Yes.
we heal the planet,
We heal ourselves.
we heal ourselves.
And we heal the planet. So there is this beautiful feedback loop, and we will leave you, Kim, and our listeners with that beautiful image of healing ourselves and the planet. And thank you so much for having us today. It has really been a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. And I wonder if there's a way that we can together or make a hum together for the last minute or so, or a few breaths, if it would come through. I'm not sure if it will, but that would be such an honor. Would you join me?
Well, it will, I mean,
I got it, honey.
okay, so we just put original sound from musicians on, if you have it. That'll help, because when you make one tone,
Okay.
it literally
It cuts it off
it
usually.
cuts it off. So we'll do this and
We'll see if
hey,
it will
okay,
work.
so here we
Okay.
go.
We'll
If you're listening, please feel free to join us.
Breathing the light.
close our eyes and take a nice deep breath.
And one more.
One more time. Have that little moment of silence and just say we hope that came through the Zoom waves.
I think it did.
Thank you so
That's-
much, Kim.
And thank you so much. Best wishes, many blessings, and all the love to you
Thank
and to
you.
the planet.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
This concludes today's episode of the Frequency Matters podcast. You can learn more about Jonathan and Andi Goldman on their website, healingsounds.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Frequency Matters podcast, released on the 15th and 30th of each month. On our next episode, I'll have the opportunity to talk with David Weschler, a researcher, inventor, and author in the world of electroculture for over 12 years. Frequency matters. Frequency